Hi, this is Priyanka and I welcome you all to Srijan Wednesday webinars. For those of you who are attending for the first time, this is a community initiative by Srijan Technologies. As a part of this initiative, we host webinars every alternate Wednesday. We invite experts from a variety of different domains who talk on subjects like front-end technologies, UI UX, mobile apps, media, entrepreneurship, community building, digital marketing, and many more. Today we will learn how you can build a website that generates ROI and ensures that your website does what you need it to do. We'll also see how you can actually make your website do what your customers expect it to and provide the best user experience to tie everything together. I would request all participants to please type in any questions that you have during the presentation so we can take them up in the last 15 minutes of this webinar. I would now like to introduce our speaker for today's webinar. We have with us Mark Isaacson. Mark is a freelance Drupal developer and has been using Drupal as a framework to build websites for his clients for over 5 years. He specializes as a backend developer and focuses on creating custom web applications and acting as a tech lead for larger projects. Thank you, Mark, for joining us today. We are very delighted to have you. While you get hooked onto Mark's presentation, please don't forget to take this conversation live on Twitter using our hashtag SrijanWW. You can share your thoughts by tagging us and Mark in your tweets using our handles @Srijan and @Mark E. Isaacson. So without taking up any more time, I think we should get started. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Priyanka. I'm really excited to be presenting on the webinar today, and I think we'll launch right into it here. I think you've had enough time to look at my title slide, and we're ready to move on to the presentation here. So to give you a bit of background about myself, you can find me on Drupal.org under the username Vegan Triathlete. I've been doing Drupal now for I don't know. I guess it's somewhere in the range of 5.5 years I've been building websites for clients. And I've recently started teaching classes online at Udemy. And you can find me on my profile there under Mark Isaacson. The presentation that I'm doing today is meant to be a conversation, not a monologue. This is the interactive version of one of the online classes that I have on Udemy. So with that, I'd like to make sure that all the participants here are ready to rock, because I've got some questions for you. So the first thing that I want you to do is go to your chat window, and I want you to type in as many different types of websites as you can think of, and I'll give you about 10 seconds to do it. So please, if you can go to your chat window and just right off the top of your head, tell me about as many different types of websites as you can think of. Excellent, excellent. So I'm glad to see. You can have some more of them continue to come in. I see you guys are coming with ideas. That's great. I'm going to start reading off some of the things that we have here, because the people who will be watching this later on won't be able to see the things that you're putting in there. So I'm just going to really quickly read down the list that was here. There's some specific websites that were named, like Yahoo and Google. Then there's like static sites, e-commerce sites, dynamic, classified sites, branded website, e-commerce, blog, forums, social, portfolios, video, content management systems, newsletters, Gmail. So we got a bunch of different ideas of types of websites that are coming in here. Thanks so much for playing along that game with me. So then, when we're thinking about the websites here that I just read to you, some of them do get at some of the ideas of a type of website, a categorization of a website, and some of them come up with ideas of specific website names. And then the question that you would need to ask is whether thinking of websites in that sense would enable you to be able to create a website that would give you good return on investment. So the next thing that I want to ask you to do is, given the different types of websites that we had put in the chat window there, is to put your answers in about why you would need a website. So go ahead and take about a minute or so to put your answers to that question there. Why do you need a website? Okay, we've got a few answers coming in here. I'd like to see if people can come up with some more answers. Thanks, we got some more rolling in right now. I'll give you about another 30 seconds here to come up with some more ideas. Okay, 5 more seconds. All right, great. So let me go through some of the types of answers that we have in the website to this question here. So I see things like, let me get to my answers here. A lot of answers. Share information or generate business. Get a larger market share. Promotion of business. Solve problems. Tell people what you do. Reach out to a lot of people. It's convenient for your customers to reach you through it, to represent yourself, to build an online presence, to brand yourself, to promote your products online, to sell a product or a service, to market yourself, to market services, to attract businesses to your portfolio, to spread different information, and because it's available everywhere, I need my customers to reach me. So those are all different reasons that people said that they need a website. So what we would need to do now when we look at those types of answers that we've gotten there is that, given the answers that we were proposing there, would any of those answers give you a clear picture of how to start defining your answer? And I would say that some of those answers do start to give you a clear definition of how you're going to need to define your website. And then the other question that you would want to ask is, would you be able to have a way to start defining your website from any of the answers that were there? Like, could you pick any one of them out of the hat, and then you would be able to say, oh, okay, now I know what I need to be doing? And I think that some of the answers would need perhaps a bit more clarification, that you wouldn't really have a clear sense of how you'd go about defining your website. So here are ideas that I have of why people would need a website, and the way that I would categorize different types of websites that can make things clearer for people. So this is going from maybe what you would consider like the least complex type of website to perhaps the most complex website, maybe not maintaining that exact flow through the top to the bottom. But so, like, one type of a website that people may need would be something that you might call like a placeholder, or I'm calling it a birth announcement. Let's say that you are a startup business and you just want to kind of make your presence known to the world. That's what I'm calling the birth announcement. It's announcing the birth of your startup. Or like a coming soon website. So that type of a website is pretty much just getting your presence established on the internet, and people know now that you exist. Moving beyond this like under construction placeholder website would be a website that's like, yes, we are for real. And the idea behind this website is so that people can get a sense that, like, oh yes, there's an actual business here. They take themselves seriously enough that they've taken the time to create a website, and it gives people a place that they can go online and maybe, you know, find out some information about the company, but maybe not a tremendous amount. That it's a website that was put together more out of the need, so that when you're doing some marketing and you are talking to prospective clients and they say, oh, what's your website? You've got a URL that you can tell them. That's what the Yes We Are Real website is for. Moving beyond just having fulfilled the need that, yes, you've got a www that you can hand to somebody, is like a marketing brochure type site. And the way that a marketing brochure site functions is that, so you've maybe done some networking and people are interested in you and they've asked you about, oh, what's your website? and they would go to this website, and this is where they can find a lot of details about your products and your services, and like how they can get in touch with you. But it's pretty much the same thing as what you could have produced if you just had some printed brochures that you carried to the networking event with you, and you just handed them out. So you could think of it, it might even be something like before we had the web presence, where people would do some of like these trifold brochures to hand things to people. That's what I'm calling a marketing brochure website. So moving on from there is what I'm calling a search engine magnet website. And the idea behind this is that this is more than just a little bit of information about yourself. But the site is created with the idea that it's going to help people to find you now. It's not used solely once people have met you at a networking event and they've asked you for your domain name. This is something that you're using so that when people are on the internet, they can find out more about you and become aware that you exist and get interested in your products and services, and then they would potentially then contact you to avail themselves of your product or services. Related to that, but somewhat different, and the reason that I throw some of these other ones in here is to make it clear that not all websites are geared towards selling a product or service. So what some websites may do, I call them the cause promoter, and whatever your cause may be, whether it's reducing sweatshop labor, or it's animal rights, or it's a political candidate that you're looking to promote, that you've got this website that is going to be, sorry, I'm just checking here. It looks like we got a chat. Okay, what I'm focusing on right now is there's a question, does this have for a company or for personal branding as well? This is for either one. It doesn't matter whether this is personal branding for you as an individual or you're an enterprise entity and you're looking to use a website. In either case, you're looking to get some type of return on your investment. All right, so so the cause promoter, as I was saying, is the outcome that you're looking for there is more so for people to be taking action on something that you believe in. Another type of a website could be what I call like the authority establisher, is that it's going to make you a recognized person in your field. And so what you're going to be doing on the website is posting thought type of pieces that are going to establish the fact that you are a thought leader and you know what you're talking about, that you're innovative and you've got good ideas for people. A very different type of website would be something that I call like the efficiency improver. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you've already got a customer base. And somebody actually mentioned this in one of the types of websites. They might have worded it differently, but that the website just gives a convenient way for people to be able to do business with you who are already doing business with you otherwise. Taking it beyond that, and somebody also did mention something very similar to this, is that it allows you to reach more people all over the world. So you may have your business and you've got your local clients, and now you want to be able to extend your reach and be able to have a global marketplace, and so you put up a website that will allow you to extend the reach that way. Now moving into taking a different attitude about the website, some people need websites not for external clients, but for their internal clients, and they would create an intranet for that. So this may be a website that isn't even really meant to be public facing, that you might have a distributed company, you've got people all over the world, and you need a way for those people to collaborate with each other, and so you've set up an intranet on the website. And related to that, although this may be public facing, is the idea of a community portal. So this gives a way that you can have people who are interested in what you are interested in be able to interact with each other via the community portal that you've created. So that's to give you some idea of the way that I would go about categorizing websites. And to continue with why we need a website, what I say it comes down to is that there's one purpose that all websites have, no matter what type of website they are. And this is a really important point that you need to keep in mind. is that the reason you need a website is that a website is going to act as a faithful employee that works around the clock to provide some type of benefit to the employer. And the employer would be you. It's your company, or it's you as an individual. And you need that website to be working around the clock for you. If it's not working around the clock for you, if it's not providing you any type of return on the investment in creating the website, then you've really failed to fulfill the purpose of that website. Okay, so now that we've gotten all that out of the way, you're finally ready to start answering some of these other questions. Because at this point, now you become a savvy person and you know that a website is an investment, and that investment is supposed to pay dividends. It's supposed to give you a return on that investment. A website isn't just any old thing because we've got the World Wide Web now and it's fun to throw around HTML and CSS or maybe PHP or whatever tool you want to use, that you know that you need a website because it's an investment and you expect to get a return on that investment. Key point to keep in mind when you're going to be defining a website. Okay, so when you are going to start defining your website, you need to think about what your vision is for that website. And your vision is answering the question, what's in it for you? What are you going to get out of that website? So it's quiz time again, and I'm just going to give you 10 seconds here to very quickly, I want to see how many of you can actually come up with a vision for the website. So please very quickly type an example just of one vision for a website. Okay. Okay, we'll give a couple more seconds here. I've had one answer. If we can't have more people, yes, you're in the chat window right now, Sharon. You can type in your answer right there. So, all right, and let's see if we can get one or two more answers in here, and then I will go over what we have there. Okay, good. So vision for website. We've got a few suggestions in here. So what we're looking at with the visions that we're seeing here, so I've got Facebook, connect all the world, business, more revenue, business model, simple and intuitive, helping people, beautiful samples of websites. Okay, so what we need to look at with these visions is you need to ask the question, these visions that you've given me, is there anything measurable in those visions? How would you know when that vision was being met? And does the vision that you've given as a suggestion here actually provide you energy or motivation to be creating the website? Now, not to call anybody out or be critical, if you look at the visions that we've listed here, not very many of them really touch on these points that well. They're just sort of like general abstract concepts that you've thrown out as opposed to a statement of this is exactly what I'm going to get out of that, and this is something that I would be able to measure, and this is something that would give me the drive and the motivation to go about investing in this website and creating this website. So what is a vision? So an example of a vision is like what you would be stating is that when my website is functioning the way I expect it to be functioning, I will get 1,000 unique visitors per day, and I will get 200 email signups per day. That's the time. That's the type of an answer that a vision would be giving you. Cheryl, I know that I pushed you guys with 10 seconds. Like I say, I'm not looking to criticize you guys here. We need to. It was just to get your brain engaged so that you can understand better what I'm describing to you here. So, I really do appreciate all of you playing along, and you're going to have more opportunity to play along here, and I'm going to continue to push the pace along. So don't take offense, on the feedback that I give. But so one example of a vision is, like I say, where you'd have something specific that you would say, my website, when it's functioning the way I want it to function for me, will generate, $10,000 a month in consulting fees. That's an example of a vision. So the next piece that you need to look at, once you have an idea of the vision, once you've answered what's in it for you, you need to look at your website mission. And that's where you answer what's in it for your website visitor. Okay? Your visitors need to get something out of the website when they visit, otherwise they're not going to continue visiting. And so your mission is supposed to answer the question about what's in it for your website visitor. So here you go, another quiz. I'm going to give you another 10 seconds or so here to see very quickly if you can come up with an example of a mission for your website. So let's see if we can get a few suggestions in the chat window here. Okay, if we can get another couple of suggestions. We've had a couple of them posted in here. See if we can get one more. Okay. All right. So what we've seen here, the missions. So we have some things that were here. Give me a second to scroll in the window here. We sell products, I think it was maybe more in a response to the vision statement. I don't think that was a response to the mission. So some benefits which people wanted to have, what we want to do, to provide complete service and information at first use. To get 1,000 unique visitors every day would be like a vision. Mission is about website information, makes clients feel getting an awesome, beautiful website is easy, comfort of use for visitors. So those were some ideas that people threw out there for what a mission would be. And then what you want to do when you analyze whether you've come up with a good mission or not is that you want to ask the question, does that thing that you just named provide enough value to your visitors? Have you stated it in a way that would be enticing the visitors? You would want to ask the question, would that drive you to visit the website? If this weren't your own website and you were told that this was the mission of a website, would that drive you to the website? And then the biggest thing that you need to be able to answer is that something that's going to drive customers to your website? So you want to state your mission in a way that you can answer yes to all of those questions. Ah, yes, this is something that actually gives people a lot of value. This is something that would make me want to go to my website. This is something that would make customers want to come to my website. So let's come up with an example of a mission statement that does that. So if you consider something, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Consumer Reports, let's say, but they test out products and then they give their reviews on the products. So a mission statement for a website like that would be to provide people the latest information on the top-selling electric cars and which cars have the longest battery life. Now, obviously, I'm focusing that very tightly. It's not to be to say that there would be one website that would only be dealing with electric cars, but it's a possibility. This could be, a car enthusiast site, and their mission of the site is to help people understand which is the best electric car that's going to have the best acceleration and is going to hold the battery charge the longest. That's something very specific that people will be able to get out of visiting that website. So there's an example of a mission statement for you. So I've asked you whether you would be able to get your customer to the website. And so what you need to keep in mind is when I'm asking about your customer, you're not talking about just any old generic person that happens to have an internet connection. Your website needs to be built for somebody specific. You have to have an image in your mind of who are you building this website for? Who is your ideal customer? When I ask the question whether the mission would drive your customer to your website, are you able to answer that question? If you don't have a clear enough picture of who your customer is, you're not going to be able to answer that question about whether that customer is going to come to your website or not. You have to know who your website is meant for. The more demographics you can attach to your ideal customer, the better job you're going to be able to do to be able to attract that ideal customer. So you might be targeting a particular age group. You may be targeting a particular gender. You may be targeting socioeconomic. There's any number of factors that you can consider that define your ideal customer. And you need to think about as many of those factors as you can so you get a really clear picture of who you are building the site for. And you also need to be really clear who is the website not meant for. You can't build a website that pleases everybody. If you try to say things in a way, or if you try to say enough things so that everybody is attracted to your website, then nobody's going to be attracted to your website. And where you can see this come into play with many websites is the home page is like the prime real estate. And so let's look at the example of a corporation, and they're building their corporate website, and you've got all the different departments in the corporation, and they're all clamoring for space on the home page. They want to get their little blurb in there. The problem is you can't clutter up a home page that way. It's overwhelming for people. And so if the corporation would be clear about who their ideal customer is, they would have a much better sense about what's supposed to be on that home page. And if they also know who their who is not meant to be their customer, then they're able to free themselves up a lot so that they don't throw in a bunch of things on their website that's really going to be detracting the message from their ideal customer and going to be potentially confusing their ideal customer. Okay, so in connecting with your ideal customer, what you're aiming for with your website to get the best return on your investment is this strong connection with your ideal customer. And in order to do that, you've got to be able to show your style. Your website needs to tie into who you are, whether that's who you are as an individual or who you are as who the corporation is. But your website needs to project a certain type of vibe or energy. And you need to realize that the way that the world is now, there are so many things that have become commoditized that what you're really selling is you. If you want people to purchase your product or your service, they need to connect with you. Let's say that you're a web developer like I am. How many web developers are there in the world now? Lots and lots and lots of them. Why should people buy the web development services from me instead of from somebody else? They have to feel that there's something special about me and they connect with me. That means that I have to be willing to be different and at the same time to be authentic so that they know who I am and how I'm different from other people who provide web development services. And when you're thinking about showing your style and maybe you're a little bit nervous about, oh, I don't want to be too different, like I need to be able to appeal to as broad a market as possible, you need to think about that, oh no, wait a minute, I'm targeting an ideal client. I want my ideal customer. That's how I'm going to have the best working relationship. That's how I'm going to have the most success. And you and your ideal customer are going to be a perfect match. So you don't have to be afraid of showing what your style is and turning people away. If they're turned away, then those are probably the people who weren't your ideal customer anyway, and it's a good thing that you turned them away. Okay, so when you're going to be showing your style, let me give you some more specifics about what I mean by style. And keep in mind, these different types of styles, one of these isn't better than the other. There's no right style or wrong style here. You need to figure out what your style is. And by the way, when you are building a website, you are going to be choosing a particular personification of your style. You may have different styles in different environments. Who you are offline may not be the same as who you are online on your website. So you can feel free to choose from any of these styles that I'm listing here, even if in a different context that may not be the style that you embody there. So when you look at formal versus informal, you've got to think about, again, your ideal customer and how are they going to want to be approached. Do they want to be dealing with you more kind of like you're the expert, you're the superior, and they are going to be coming to you to get your sage wisdom and all this knowledge and expertise that you have? Or are they going to be approaching you more as a peer and that they want to be able to be on the same level with you? And similarly, as you go through these other types of styles here, look at them and think about how your customer is going to want to interact with you when they're visiting the site, and make sure that your style is going to support that. So how you have some idea of what your style is going to be and what's appropriate for one website and maybe not appropriate for another website is to have an understanding of what your customer needs. So you want to make sure that that's what you're focusing on your site. And you want to tell your customer only what she needs to know. You don't want to overwhelm your customer with too much information. Keep in mind that less is more, and as Steve Krug says, don't make me think. You don't want to overwhelm your visitor when they are visiting your website with all these choices about where am I supposed to click right now. This TLDR, if you're not familiar with that abbreviation, it stands for too long, didn't read. So if you put too much information in front of your customer at any point on the site, your customer's not going to be willing to make that investment to read through all of it. And similarly, if you've got too much information bombarding your customer all at once, they're going to forget why they were there. They're going to get distracted by something else on your site. And sure, you might be drawing them into something that caught their attention, but they're going to forget why they came to your website in the first place, and they aren't going to be likely to take the action that you wanted them to take because they were motivated to come to your site, but then they got there and they got distracted and they started doing something else on the site. Okay, so how you actually put all this stuff into practice on your website is in the copy that you create for your website. Nothing exists on your website without having some copy. And the key point to keep in mind with your copy is that you're writing your copy for human beings. You are not writing your copy for search engines. And I know where people can get confused with that, because you think about, oh, I'm supposed to be found by the search engines, and I've got to stuff all these keywords in there, and I've got to structure my site in a way that it's easy to crawl by the search engines so that I can turn up high in the search results. But what you're doing when you think in terms of writing it for a search engine is you're forgetting about the fact that humans need to be able to understand it too. And if you can write things so that a human being connects with what you're creating on your site, then the search engines are going to be able to connect with it too. The search engine's job is to return the most relevant results to people. So you aren't going to be able to make it the most relevant for people if all you're doing is stuffing things so that a search engine is going to have some idea of what's going on. You want to make sure that the human being visiting your site knows what's going on. And when you're writing your copy, you do need to know it's not an easy process. I mean, this is really the heart of what's going to define your website for you, and it's going to determine whether your website is successful or not. So don't expect that this is going to be something that's an easy process for you. The key is to get started doing something at first, because it's easier to revise than it is to create in the first place. So start getting some ideas down. You could start writing your website copy as though you were sending an email to one of your friends. Hey, I came up with this amazing idea for this product or service, and I want to tell you all about it. And you can do a free-form email and then see how you pull apart the critical pieces from that email to then actually structure them to pieces of content on the site. And the more you work on it, the better that you're going to get at it. So keep on working at editing it and revising it and tweaking it, because over time it'll get better and better. And you're going to find that the copy is then the piece that ties everything together for you. And you need to keep in mind that even though it's not easy and it takes a lot of time to do, it's really worth the investment in time. It's so much better to take your time to make sure that your copy is strong before you start building your website than to just start building a website and get things built in a way that you find it's really not working well for you. So yes, it's hard, it's going to take time, and it's totally worth it. Put the time into creating good website copy and see if you can actually do some market research with your prospective clients and have them take a look at your copy and give you feedback on it. Once you've got your website copy pretty well filled out, that's when you can start thinking about your website map. And your website map is not the same thing as a site map. A site map is what you submit to these search engines. Your website map is what's going to give that overall layout, the look and feel of your website. You've gotten all this copy that you've written, the About Us page, our services page, the resources, whatever types of benefits that your visitors are going to receive from having visited your site, part of what you define in your mission statement, that's giving you the reasons for the different pieces of content that you have on the site. And your site map is laying out how you are going to utilize all of this copy that you've written, all of the content that you've created for the website. So it will also have an impact on the way that you design your navigation on the site, because when you think about the different pieces of website copy that you've written, there's a way that people need to be able to get from the one piece of copy to the other piece of copy. You're not just going to create one page on your website that's this really long page and they just scroll down forever and ever to get to all of that stuff there. So that's what your website map is going to do for you, is give you that the architecture of your site. When you are thinking in terms of how you are going to lay out your site and architect your site, you need to keep in mind what your visitors' mindset is going to be when they access your site. You need to think of what their frame of reference is. Where were they before they came to your website? Were you doing face-to-face networking with people and you handed them a business card and that's what brought them to your website? Were they reading a trade publication and you had advertisements in the trade publication and they had some quick response code that brought them to your website? Where were they before they came to your website? Because that thing that got them to your website is going to generate a set of expectations in their mind. When they land on your website, they're going to be expecting something as a result of traveling to your website from wherever they were before. And they're going to have a particular state of mind. They might be expecting that you are going to solve a problem for them immediately on the website. They came to your website because they thought they were going to get the answer to what is the electric car that has the best battery charge that gets you from 0 to 60 in the least amount of time. They may be coming to your website with a completely different expectation and a different state of mind. Let's go back to the idea of the marketing brochure site, for instance. They aren't expecting that you're going to be solving problems for them when they get to your site. They're going to be visiting your site with the expectations that they're going to get to find out more about the company. So you have to be aware of what the state of mind of your customers will be when they actually hit your website, as well as you need to think about where they are in what I'm calling the sales cycle. But don't take sales literally, that means that you're necessarily selling something on your site. Your site is designed to get your visitors to take some action. There's some type of call to action on the site, and that's what I'm using the term sales for. It's like where they are in that whole process of their interactions with you and how close they are to taking whatever your ultimate action is that you want them to take. This all ties into how did they happen to come across your website. If your website is very early in the sales cycle, then you're going to need to build the website in a very different way from if they were accessing your website when they were towards the very end of the sales cycle. If they've already had whatever type of interactions with you before they've come to your website, that they're very late in the sales cycle, then your website is definitely going to be geared much more directly towards asking for the sale. If it's earlier in the sales cycle, then your website is going to be geared much towards getting those additional touches with your visitors, giving them a greater comfort level. And then the last point that I wrote here about how they use the website, that is getting to the idea of literally how they are accessing your site. Do you expect that they're going to be accessing your site on some type of mobile device, on a tablet? Are they going to access it on a smartphone? Are you expecting that your customers are actually accessing your website on a laptop or a desktop computer? Because that's going to impact how you lay things out and how you design the navigation so that it's easy for them to get around your website. Okay, your website brand. Your visitors are coming to your site. They're expecting to get some things out of your site. They were someplace before they came to your site. And the way that you brand your website is about the look and feel of your website. It's about the typography that you use. It's about the color choices you make. It's about the graphics that you use. And all of those choices that you make have to be consistent. If you've already got a branded product, if you've already got your business cards, you've got things that you've been doing in the media, in publications, you've had brochures that you mailed out, you've done direct mailing to people, whatever branding that you have already created, obviously your website brand has to match with your existing branding. So if you've got existing branding, you've probably already made font choices, you've probably already made color choices, and you want to make sure that the website reflects that consistently. You don't want them to get to your website and then feel like they're dealing with a completely different entity than they were dealing with before. Your brand also has to tie into your style. Remember, we talked about formal versus informal and the other styles there. So the way that you are going to choose your fonts and the graphics that you're going to employ on the site need to support the style that you want to convey to the visitors of your site, and it has to also be in line with your copy, because your copy should be supporting your style as well. So when I say that it needs to be consistent with your copy, there's a particular tone that you're going to use in the way that you write your copy. You're going to have a particular word choice. You're going to have a particular sentence structure that you're using. And you want to make sure that, let's say, for instance, you went with the approach of your style that this was going to be academic. And so the copy on your site is dealing with much longer words, much more kind of sophisticated language that you're using, a much more complex sentence structure. You're probably not going to want to be creating a color theme like a rainbow or a circus type of feel on your site, because that's going to be out of line with the way that your copy is written. Now that you've gone through that whole process, and this, like I said, this is the online interactive version of a class. I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you all at once right now. I don't expect that you're going to absorb all of it and you're going to understand all of it right now. It's something that you're definitely going to need to put time into and that you would need to think about. And then where everything becomes real and where you finally put all of these big ideas together is when you set your priorities and your budget. You can have these grand visions. You can have these grand mission statements that you have. You can have these tremendously audacious ideas of what your website's going to do and how you're going to go about doing it and where people are going to be finding out about your website. But at the end of the day, nobody has unlimited resources. And when it comes time to finally start pulling these pieces together and get ready to create your definition, your website definition document, which is what's coming up next here, you need to think about what your priority and budget is going to be for this. You need to think about, out of all these things that you've been writing down, you've been thinking about, which of those things is going to give you your best return on investment? Which are those things that you want to do right now? What are those things that are going to be critical to supporting your vision and your mission? And then finally, you need to keep in mind, how much is it really worth to you? You can't only look at your website as an expense when you're setting your priorities and your budget. You have to think of it in terms of an investment. And how much is that investment going to generate for you? And how much is a particular feature or aspect of the website going to support that investment? And how much is it going to be worth to you to have that particular feature on the website? So I've mentioned the website definition. This is the document where you formally put in writing all of the pieces. That's not to say that you haven't been putting anything in writing prior to this, but this is where you organize all of that information that you've created up to this point. It's the master plan of your website. It's what you go back to when you have a question down the road about, am I supposed to be doing this, or am I not supposed to be doing this? Am I on track or not? It's a roadmap for you. It lets you know, what am I going to do first? What am I going to do next? How am I going to go about building out this website? Because you're probably not going to launch everything all at once, particularly when you take into consideration your priorities and your budget. You may have to roll it out in phases, and this website definition document is going to help you lay out those phases. And this is something that's your final checkpoint before you actually start building the website. You want to make sure that you've got your website definition document. It's easier to change something on paper than it is to change it once you've got a site that people are using. So you want to make sure that you've done a good job of creating this website definition document, because it tells you what your website does, how it does it, and how it's supposed to look. And the better job you can do of creating your website definition document, the better website that you're going to build. If you can't put it in writing, then you're not really clear on what it is that you're aiming for. So if you can't get it into your website definition document, then you probably haven't thought about it enough, and you need to put more time into it. And with all of this that I'm saying about the importance of the website definition document, and you should spend all of this time to figure out all of these things, and you've got to set your priorities and your budgets, and you've got to know all of these answers, that's not to say that once you've written your website definition document that this is set in stone and nothing is ever going to change. The website definition document, like I said, is your roadmap. You may find that once you launch the website that you decided to choose a different path. You laid out a map to begin with, and then you found that that map wasn't quite getting you to where you needed to go. And so you may still come back and revise it. So it is a work in progress. It's not something that you have to adhere to like a slave, and you can never change your mind later on. Okay, so I've thrown a ton of information at you. There's probably a lot for you to think about. I know we've got a bunch of answers that are, a bunch of questions that are coming in here, and Priyanka is going to help to moderate that for me so I can get back to answering some of those questions for you. We'll have a certain amount of time to answer those questions, but if you need to get in touch with me later on, you've got my information on the screen here. If you're interested in taking the online version of this course on Udemy, I'd be happy to create a discount code for you so that you can take the class at your own pace. You can review the material as much as you want to. You've got the opportunity to participate in the discussion forums, and I can answer your questions and help you through this whole process of making sure that you create a website that does what you need it to do and provides you a good return on the investment in creating that website. I turn it back over to you, Priyanka.
Well, that was a very, very interesting session, Mark. Thank you so much for sharing how we can actually create a very effective website that markets and sells our products or services and generates ROI at the same time. It was really engaging, and we have a flurry of questions as well as comments. So I'll start by taking up the first question by Pratham, who's asking, does all this apply for websites or for only for company website, or all these learnings can also be applicable for personal branding as well?
So this applies to a website, whether it's for an individual, whether it's for a for-profit corporation, whether it's for some non-profit entity, or whether it's for something even like just a group of friends that decided they wanted to get together and have a community portal. It's worthwhile to go through this whole process for any of those types of websites. Now, naturally, you're going to tailor the process to be in line with how much of a risk factor you're facing if your website doesn't do what you want it to do. If you're going through this with just a group of friends and it's just sort of a bit of an experiment that you are conducting, it's not going to be the end of the world if you end up creating a website that's a total flop. And so you may not invest the same amount of your effort in going through this whole process. But it applies to any type of a website, because recall what I said at the beginning of the presentation is that the purpose of any website is to act, as I was saying, an employee, just to give a specific term to it, even though when you might be dealing with a community portal, you might not think of the website as an employee. But you're creating the website to act as an employee, to work around the clock, to achieve some type of benefit for the employer or employers. And so the whole process applies regardless of what type of website you're making.
All right. We have a follow-up question here by Rohit, who wants to know, can we also use this information with blogging websites? I'm sure you've already answered it, but would you be willing to elaborate on it with reference to blogging websites specifically?
Absolutely. So when you're creating a blog, you still need to think about, why are you creating that blog? Is the idea of the blog just that you're going to get a bunch of readers of the blog? And it's fine if that's all that you want. I'm not saying that you have to monetize the blog, but you still have to have some sense, you still have to have a vision for your blog. If your blog is functioning as it's supposed to function, does that mean that you're going to get a certain number of comments every day on the posts that you create on the blog? Is your blog supposed to be attracting people to sign up for your email list because you want to be able to market other products and services? So even with a blog, you have to have some vision and you have to have some mission as well. Why would people bother coming to your blog? What are they going to get out of reading your blog? And you can go through this entire process that I laid out here and ask those same questions for your blog. And when you answer those questions thoroughly and accurately, you're going to have much more success with your blog, including when you have to answer the question, how are people coming to your blog? How are they accessing your blog? That means you have to answer the question about, where did they even find out about your blog? Why did they come to your blog in the first place? So yes, it applies with blogs as with any other website.
All right, thank you so much. I hope it really helps. Our next question is by Abhishek, who wants to know, does background audio on the home page help, like in Anthem if it's a sports-centric website?
Okay, let me go back. I think that I see that question there. I just want to clarify it. I think I remember when it asked that. Background audio on the homepage help. Here's what you need to keep in mind with a website, is that you want your visitors to keep coming back to the website. It doesn't do you any good if they visit your website one time and then they never come back again. And the problem with something like having an audio track that plays on the website is that it might be interesting for people the first time they visit the website, and this applies also to videos on your website. If you have videos set to automatically play when people visit the site, it might be okay the first time somebody visits your website, but they're going to get tired of it when they keep coming back, and it keeps happening all the time because they've already heard it, they've already seen it, and they don't want to have to stop it. And then another piece that you need to keep in mind is how I said that you need to think about how people are accessing your website and what their expectation is, and whether that's going to be appropriate or not. What if they're accessing your website from a work environment? They are in an office space and they're sitting in a cubicle. How well is that going to be received if they visit your site and now suddenly some video or audio starts playing and their coworkers can hear it? So I don't know, as far as your specific question with a sports-centric website, uh, I would steer away from something that automatically starts when people visit a site for any type of a site. But I can't answer the question anymore than that for you, because you would need to know, you're saying it's a sports-centric site, but who are your visitors? You know, where are you targeting them? How are they coming to your site? What are they expecting to get when they come to your site? My gut feeling is I don't like things that automatically play. That's not to say that you wouldn't have been able to define your website in a way that you felt that you could justify that it was particularly appropriate to have the background audio. So I hope that clarifies your question some and helps you understand whether it would be good in your situation or not.
All right. If you have a follow-up question, please feel free to type in, but I hope it certainly helps you. Uh, just another quick reminder that we still have a few minutes to go for the webinar, so if you have any more questions, please feel free to type them in. Also, you can take this conversation live by tweeting using the hashtag SrijanWW and tagging our Twitter handle @Srijan. We'll take up our next question here by Shireen, who wants to know that you basically explain different types of styles in your presentation, right? So, what should be the ideal, style about startups for startups? Could you please, explain more on that?
Okay, so there are different types of startup businesses, and there is no one ideal style for a startup because it depends on who your startup is targeting as the audience. Some startups may find that they do very well with this a more type of casual and off the cuff type of style, a more approachable, like down to earth, and what you see is what you get. Other startups may find that that ruins their credibility, that they need to take a more, let's say, academic approach to things or a more formal approach on their website, particularly if you are targeting more of like corporate investors. So the fact that it's a startup doesn't define any style. And what you have to remember as well is that the idea is that it's not going to be a startup forever. At some point, you want it to be a thriving organization. And what is going to be the style of the organization at that point? If you try to launch a website with the idea that I'm a startup and I'm going to adopt a certain style when I'm a startup, but then I'm going to change my style once I become successful, you run the risk that now you alienate your customers. You kind of pulled the rug out from underneath them. They say, well, wait a minute, I don't know you anymore. Like, I came to your site in the first place because you had this style, and now that you're established, you've totally changed your style, and now I don't feel like I'm a good fit. So you still need to think in terms of what your true style is going to be and what's going to connect with your ideal customer, and that really isn't impacted by the fact that you're a startup.
All right, I hope it really helps you, Shireen. Our next question is by Venkat, who wants to know How to make unique color combination for the website which makes it look more interesting. Is there any source that we can look for, or would you like to share some pointers on that, Mark?
So there are resources that you can use on the internet. If you just use a search engine, you could look for things like color palettes. And your color choices are important. In fact, I'm working on a Udemy course with one of my colleagues who's very much into the psychology of color, and right now we're actually doing blabs where we're doing having our discussions with each other to define how we're going to be branding a particular website. And one of the things we are going to get into is the color choices of your site. So yes, there are resources that you can find on the internet for choosing different color palettes. It's also something certainly that there are branding companies that would be happy to put together. It's called like a mood board, and part of what they put on the mood board is things like your fonts and the color choices that you're going to use there. So there's no one definitive source, though, about how you're going to choose a color palette that's more attractive, because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And again, it keeps coming back to knowing who your ideal customer is and knowing what your style is. So I've launched. I'm actually rebranding myself now. I've been a web developer. I'm looking to launch my online teaching business, and so I'm launching a personal brand. And so when I launched my personal website, the markeisaacson.com website, I did have to make some decisions about how do I want to portray myself. And the color palette that I actually ended up choosing for myself was more like a shades of gray type of color palette, as opposed to more like pastels. So you're going to have to make that choice based on having answered the other questions that you go through in the course of completing this process.
All right. Okay, so Shireen has a follow-up question, and after that, we'll very quickly take up one last question. Shireen is saying that you had said that we are not building website for search engines and we are building it for humans. Then how could people connect without the search engine searches for the users if we haven't concentrated on search engines while building a website? I think it's a very, very interesting question.
Okay, so what the key to understand is that this isn't mutually exclusive. It's not for humans or for search engines. Your human beings are going to be searching for things on the internet when they're using the search engines. And when you know your ideal customer and you're clear on the mission of your website, what your customer is going to get out of visiting your website, that's going to let you know the content that you can create. And the content that you create to answer those questions, to provide that value, is naturally going to then contain the types of keywords that your customers are searching on. So I'm not saying that you don't take into consideration any of the keywords that your customers are likely to use. It's that you're going to utilize those keywords in an organic fashion that makes sense for the types of things that are important to your customers. And so when you are using the language that your ideal customer understands and you are talking directly to your ideal customer, the search engines are going to be able to index that content that you've created in a way that your ideal customer will find your site when they are using a search engine.
Right. All right. Our next question is, very interesting with by somebody named Indian Startups. They want to know what is the general budget range that a startup has to allocate for building their website.
That is going to vary widely because it really depends on what type of a website you want. If you're going to create the website that I call like the placeholder or the birth announcement site, that could be a very simple site that has a very small amount of content on it, and you could just purchase some template. It could be a static HTML site, and that could be something that you might be able to develop, well, the actual building costs of it for, maybe a couple $100 or so. You're still going to probably be spending a fair amount of your time thinking about how to best define your website, and your time naturally has a value. So what I'm addressing is the actual, when you're asking about the budget range to allocate, I'm assuming you're asking about the physical expenditure, the money that you have to lay out. And you're talking about a startup, and so I'm assuming that probably the people working for that startup they're not really collecting a salary for any of this. So I'm not talking about salaries of your employees. And I'm talking about just specifically the expenditures that you're going to lay out for acquiring what hosting you need and what type of tool you're going to use, and the process of then actually paying somebody to build the site. And so to continue with the thought, if all you're building is this birth announcements placeholder site, that's going to have a much lower budget than if what your startup needs to launch with this website initially is going to be geared more towards interaction, more real interaction with the visitors to the site. If you're going to have the user contributed content, if you're going to be having some type of interaction between the users. And so you can't really specify, oh, everybody can expect to spend, this amount of money when they launch their website. If you look at a community portal like Facebook, how many thousands of person hours have gone into that? How many millions upon millions of dollars have gone into that? And how much do you think they spent when they first launched it? I would expect that when Facebook was first launched, they had budgeted a fair amount of money. There's a new tool, and I mentioned this, I'm actually using this tool, it's called blab.im. That's still in beta. And so the site that they created there, they had originally built it as like a Slack integration. And so they were able to leverage certain existing tools, but they still needed to be prepared to handle the traffic on their site. Their site is geared towards people doing this live streaming. And so they've got to have the server infrastructure in place to support the visitors on their site. So it's going to vary tremendously depending on what is the nature of your startup. What product or service are you selling? What is supposed to be the functionality of your website?
All right. I really hope that helps you. Okay, that brings us to the end of this webinar because we've already exceeded the time limit here, and I really, really would like to thank all of you because you all have been a great audience and being very patient with us. Thank you once again, Mark, for leading such an engaging session. I'm pretty sure everybody found your presentation very, very interesting and insightful. Again, a big thank you to all you attendees because you have joined us today and you have really been a very, very patient audience. Before we close, I would also like to announce that our next webinar is on navigating the UX jungle, and it would be hosted on the 28th of October and would be led by Smita Mishra, founder at Pool Wallet and the QA Zone Infosystems. For registrations and more details, you'll be getting a mail from our site. So stay tuned and thank you again for joining us today.